Everything that is going to be said in this video is my own and personal opinion. This is not a step-by-step guide, but rather useful content that has some tips and tricks for absolute beginners who have decided to play Darkest Dungeon for the first time. You can either agree or disagree with what I'm about to show you. The choice is all yours. This video will not include 2 DLC dungeons, because in my opinion, as a beginner, you should not even bother yourself with them, especially at the early stages of the game. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Yuri, also known as Starlord. In this video we will going to discuss several topics that are going to be helpful, primarily for beginner players who have just picked up a game called Darkest Dungeon and want to give it a try. This game can be merciless and unforgiving for those of you who rush things. But at the same time, it can be also quite fun and rewarding for those people who will decide to take a slow, but more safer route. Additionally, this game provides players with a lot of room to experiment, like creating different team compositions, using certain skill combinations, or equipping some useful trinkets that will help you along the way. The goal of this video and videos that I'm going to create in the future is to cover some basic aspects of the game that are important, but for some reason not too many things have been said about them. With the help of this particular video, you will be able to better understand how you should approach the Apprentice difficulty dungeons such as Ruins and Cove. Those dungeons are one of the most common and beginner-friendly as you can get. But even they can pose a great threat should you rush in blindly, completely ignoring some obvious warning signs along the way. Here are the topics that are going to be discussed in this video. Number 1. Apprentice Ruins and Cove enemies. Number 2. Strengths and weaknesses of monsters that you will meet there. Now, with that being out of the way, let us begin with the main part of this video. From the get-go, I am going to mention that, for the most part, ruins are full of undead and human type of enemies. This is a very important thing to know, because this aspect can directly influence the party members and skills that you'll be taking into that dungeon. On this difficulty, you'll be meeting such foes like Bone Soldier, Bone Courtier, Bone Arbalist, Bone Rebel, Madman, Cultist Brawler, Cultist Acolyte, as well as some of the bandits and spiders. However, most of your encounters will be packed with skeletons and occultists. With that thing in mind, you can already kind of guess that those foes that you will encounter are going to be resistant towards bleed. Thus, my advice for you is to exclude any kind of bleeding skill from your party members in favor of either blight abilities or just pure physical damage. For the most part, raw damage in Apprentice Dungeon is your best friend, because low-level blight or bleed skills are not doing that much damage, marking skills are not yet mandatory, and you'll be better off just smashing your ways with pure might. Now, I want to mention some particular foes that you might want to watch out for, as they do pose much more threat than the others. First on the list is going to be Madman. This guy is no joke, and that thing I can tell you for sure. On the one hand, he doesn't do any sort of damage to you at all. On the other, he will stress out your team with his single target and AoE stressing abilities. Do keep in mind that, in the early game, your character's stress meter will fill up very fast, and at this point of time, you do not have a good stress reduction abilities. Those, in the future, will become pretty much a must-have. Thus, whenever you encounter Madman, focus him down straight away. Toying with stress dealers is not advised. He is weak to raw damage, bleed, and blight. On the second spot, we have Bone Courtier. This skeleton with a goblet will appear way more often than Madman, but he is a bit less painful to deal with. However, once again, if you see him, he should be your first priority, unless the enemy encounter also has Madman in there. For the most part, Bone Courtier will just aim your backline with a single target stress ability that is called Tempting Goblet. It won't do much damage, but it's surely going to get your targeted hero closer to stress check that occurs when your stress meter reaches 100. Courtier weakness lies in raw damage, blight, as well as damage versus unholy type. Third on our list is going to be Cultist Acolyte. Her skill set is kinda annoying, especially if you consider the fact that besides stressing you with single target skills, she also has two nasty movement abilities. One of them pulls your backline hero in front, and the other pushes your frontline hero backwards. This is quite terrifying, especially if your team members rely heavily on proper positioning. How should you deal with this? Simple, you get rid of Acolyte. If your setup does not care about positioning, then your life is going to become a bit easier. The Acolyte is weak to raw damage, bleed, blight, and damage versus human type. Those, in my opinion, are some of the important enemies that you should be aware of when you delve into the ruins. Now I'm going to analyze the Apprentice Cove using the same pattern. One of the greatest things about Cove is that there will be a chance for you to find curios in there that will remove negative quirks as well as give you some positive ones. Just bring a lot of medicinal herbs with you, as they are a must-have item to deal with occasional debuffs from traps, which you can unwillingly trigger, and they will also be used on those curios that can give you positive and remove negative quirks. Now let's return back to the enemies that you will have to fight there. Enemy types that can be found in Cove are Eldritch ones: Pelagic Dropper, Pelagic Shaman, Sea Maggot, Deep Stinger, Drowned Troll, with occasional random encounters that can spawn cultists, bandits, spiders, and some other foes. For this dungeon, grabbing characters that have blight skills, or characters that have raw damage, or bring a cultist that can do bonus damage against Eldritch type of foes is going to make your life much easier. Don't bring bleeding skills though, fishes are highly resistant to bleed. Now let's get into some of the foes that you should be careful about. First one, and pretty much a #1 target no matter what, is Drowned Troll. This creature has one special mechanic that you have to understand. That mechanic is called self-destruction, that occurs after 2 or 3 turns. It will do devastating amount of AoE damage and apply a good portion of stress to your whole party, no matter be it on Apprentice, Veteran, Champion, Cove. His other ability is Single Target 1. It does not hit you as much and apply a little bit of stress. Whenever you encounter this guy, remember to get rid of him as fast as humanly possible, or suffer the consequences. Drowned Troll is weak against raw damage, or blight, or damage versus Eldritch type. Last but not least is of course Sea Maggot. I decided to add this fellow on the list, not because he is super deadly, but because he can teach you a few things about damage reduction mechanic and how you should deal with it. First things first. For the most part, this foe will attack you with a single target attack that has an 8% chance of applying disease onto the attacked hero. and he can also debuff you with this same attack. Sea Maggot won't do too much damage, but you should not toy with him too much, or else you'll have to cope with disease removal that costs a lot at the early game. Because he has a damage reduction mechanic, it is best to blight him, as well as do raw damage at the same time. Regular attacks will do significantly less damage to him, except for Shieldbreaker, one of the DLC characters, that has Armor Pierce ability that can kill sea maggots pretty fast. Finally, we are going to discuss Pelagic Robber. This fish guy will pop up in most of your cove battles. What makes him worth to include in this list is of course his very high base damage on his sword stack. You should be aware of it, especially if your frontline is low on HP, as one or two of those attacks will send your hero straight to death's door. His second skill is a single target spear attack that will target your backline. It does significantly less damage than sword attack, and on Apprentice Cove this skill should not pose any threat whatsoever. Starting from Veteran Cove, things will change, but I will talk about that when the time comes. So, what should I do about that foe, you might ask? Well, there are several things that can help you. First, sword slashes will focus only your frontliners. Thus, if you maintain high HP on them, this will help you a lot. You can also use defense boost skills or protection skills that will negate some of the incoming damage. Or you can simply focus droppers with your most damaging abilities. If it's dead, it won't hurt you, right? This foe, like all the other enemies in Cove, is vulnerable to Blight, Bleed, Raw damage, damage versus Eldritch. I will also quickly add some info about Pelagic Shaman. He's going to be the main stress dealer, however, he is different from those stress dealers that you fight in Ruins. Shamans will have 4 abilities: single target stress attack that does no damage, single target accuracy, damage crit buff, melee attack, should you manage to pull this guy to the first position, and single target healing spell. Such a vast arsenal of attacks may terrify you at first, but for the most part, shamans usually cast stress attacks, and should you decide to kill either shaman or, let's say, for example, dropper, the end result would be the same. Shamans share same weaknesses like the rest of the fishies. Thus, you can use those same tips I mentioned before. Now, let's move on to the conclusion. There is a lot more information that I would like to share with those of you who had just started to play Darkest Dungeon, especially considering the fact that this game has so much important aspects that do influence one way or another the flow of the game, as well as the outcome of some situations. However, it is best for me and for you also to study the game one step at a time, because remember that overconfidence is a slow and insidious killer. Always, and I will repeat, always take your time to plan each and every step that you are about to make. This way, you will be able to increase the chances of success by a huge margin. I do hope that you like this video, and I hope that you will be able to utilize the given information in your own walkthrough. Once again, I am going to state that this information was based upon my own subjective opinion, and you are free to either agree or disagree with that. The choice is all yours. Next time, we will utilize the same pattern as we did here and speak about 2 other Apprentice dungeons, Warrens and Weald. This is going to be it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for attention. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you all next time.